Is Florida out of the running for Lane Kiffin? We've got the latest. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. And thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Florida, are they out of the running for Lane Kiffin? There's a lot of evidence and firsthand conversations that I had Monday that might just suggest that. Let me first start with the most objective of data. The odds makers. Now, you can roll your eyes, you can laugh. If you want to, fine. I'm not, this is just going to be a part of what I say. You can say what you want. And there was a point in this process when Nick Saban was the front runner. There's a point in this process when Kenny Dillingham was the front runner. Well, the most recent updated odds have, for the second consecutive time these odds have come out, have Lane Kiffin as the favorite to be the next coach at LSU. As a matter of fact, right now, Lane Kiffin is minus 200. That means you'd have to bet $200 to win 100. So he's a heavy favorite to be the next LSU head coach. Florida is a distant second at plus 175, meaning you bet 100, you'd win 175. Ole Miss, distant third at 6-1. Any other college coaching job at 7-1, then an NFL head coaching job at 18-1. So listen, you can make of that what you want. You can roll your eyes and laugh. That's fine. I'm just telling you it's something to consider. It's a data point. And remember, when we're talking about odds makers, we're not talking about people that have an allegiance to LSU or Florida or Ole Miss or anywhere. Their objective is to create a number upon which they can generate action on both sides to where the juice will make them win money no matter what. The house always wins. So that's just something to consider. As of now, and we're recording this on Monday night on the 25th, November 25th, that Lane Kiffin is a heavy favorite right now to be the next LSU coach. And I want to remind you that I have maintained that the Florida media, who are really the only ones intimating that they feel Kiffin's going to end up in Gainesville. LSU media seems confident that it's going to be LSU. National media seems pretty confident it's going to be LSU. Ole Miss thinks it's going to be LSU. The only people in this mix who think it's going to be Florida are people who cover Florida. And my contention has been that the Florida media is 10 days, 14 days behind the news cycle. So let me just catch you up again with why I feel, though. I'm going to share with you some details that I got on Monday that lead me to believe Florida is not in the running anymore. So, but I'm going to get there. Let me do this chronologically. It'll make sense, I promise. So this past Friday, Lane Kiffin met with athletic director Keith Carter and Chancellor Boyce at Ole Miss. Now remember, if you're an everydayer, you know this. If you're new, thank you, welcome. But before that meeting, all that week I told you, they were going to meet on Friday. And one of two things was going to happen. Either Lane Kiffin was going to reaffirm his commitment to Ole Miss and he was going to sign that extension and they were going to announce it. Or he was not going to commit to Ole Miss. They wanted him to coach the Egg Bowl because they felt that's their best chance of winning the Egg Bowl, having him on the sideline. And they'd make an announcement about his future after the Egg Bowl. Well, we know what happened. On Friday, we got the statement from Keith Carter saying Lane Kiffin would coach the Egg Bowl. They'd make the announcement on Saturday. I was told Monday that announcement should come Saturday morning. A little more specific. So expected before LSU plays Oklahoma. The announcement from Ole Miss on Lane Kiffin's future. Now, also on Friday, remember, the LSU Board of Supervisors met, and it was behind closed doors in executive session, and the public agenda said it was about Brian Kelly's buyout, which they certainly discussed. But because they went into executive session, it was not in the public forum that allowed them to discuss a contract offer for Lane Kiffin or whomever they were targeting, and maybe even two coaches. It was Kiffin and, let's say, Eli Drinkwitz, who feels like it's LSU's second choice if everything falls apart with Lane Kiffin. Got a tidbit on Eli Drinkwitz coming up for you as well. Well, Friday, Ole Miss releases that statement. Then Friday night, the LSU contract terms for Kiffin get leaked to Ross Dellinger, who publishes them Friday evening. So you can see what's happening. Everything with LSU and Lane Kiffin was progressing. Well, the weekend comes, and on Monday, I was told Florida has begun in earnest interviewing other candidates. Among them, Eli Drinkwitz of Missouri, Clark Lee of Vanderbilt, Brent Key of Georgia Tech, John Sumrall, I'm told, from Tulane is still in the mix, despite the report from a week ago that Sumrall was supposed to meet with Florida and then canceled that meeting. I think John Sumrall at Tulane has options. I think he may very well be the choice for Ole Miss if and when Kiffin leaves. He may very well be the top choice at Auburn, and he may well be the next choice after Kiffin for Florida. But I think those are some of the names that are being considered. And as I was told on Monday from 3 different sources, one associated with LSU, one associated with Florida, and one associated with Ole Miss, that they believe Florida has sort of conceded, that they've excused themselves from this conversation, realizing Lane Kiffin is likely going to end up at LSU, so they are moving forward with their search. If something shakes that might lead Lane Kiffin back to them, they would be open to it, but it feels like right now that Florida is sort of conceding that Kiffin has chosen LSU over Florida, and so Florida is moving on with their search because if they want John Sumrall, for example, well, Ole Miss might very well be about to come open if Lane Kiffin leaves and they want him. And Auburn seemingly wants John Sumrall. So Florida needs to move forward. It's the conversation we've been having here. Like, if the longer you wait, the pool of candidates gets shallower. I mean, we've already seen now the Eric Morris, the North Texas coach, has agreed to be the next coach at Oklahoma State. We've seen James Franklin agree to be the coach at Virginia Tech. I mean, the season's not even over, and we have coaches taking other jobs. Some who fired, like James Franklin, others that are active, like Morris. So if you're Florida, if you're Ole Miss, if you're Auburn, you got to move, because every day you wait, that pool starts to thin out. Meanwhile, LSU is just waiting. LSU is singularly focused on Lane Kiffin. He is their top choice. He has been their top choice and continues to be their top choice, and they're willing to wait for him very clearly. But the indications that I got are not only that Florida is beginning to interview in earnest other candidates, sort of conceding that LSU has the lead here, but Ole Miss also is starting to get kind of antsy for the same reason about the pool thinning out. And that presents potentially the biggest challenge to LSU landing Lane Kiffin, which I'll explain when we continue. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We're also brought to you by Our Lady of the Lake, championship health partner of LSU Athletics. Our Lady of the Lake and LSU together, we roar. I've loved being able to tell some of these OLOL LSU football stories from Garrett Nussmeier and Jack Pyburn and Bauer Sharp and so many great LSU football athletes. But we are about to transition into the winter sports in the spring, which means basketball. And when you look at guys like DJ Thomas or Robert Miller III, phenomenal LSU women's basketball players like Flau'jae Johnson and Michaela Williams, they are all championship health partners with Our Lady of the Lake. They trust their care to the lake. The championship athletes on the field, on the court at LSU trust Our Lady of the Lake, and everyday champions like you and me should as well. When it comes to healthcare, we all want two things: access and convenience. And Our Lady of the Lake, throughout their standalone hospitals, their clinics, their specialty care, they provide that better than anyone, expanding healthcare in our region. So log on to ololrmc.com/LSU, ololrmc.com/LSU to learn more. Our Lady of the Lake and LSU, together we roar. So as it stands now, if in fact Florida has bowed out of the running for Lane Kiffin, for all intents and purposes, maybe keeping one toe in the water, waiting in the shallow end, just in case they have an opportunity to re-engage, but they are moving on in their search. The other part of this is Ole Miss, because Ole Miss right now is recognizing very clearly that their coach, Lane Kiffin, is not likely to be back. For all the reasons that we've talked about over many episodes now, and at the risk of sounding repetitive, I'll reiterate. You have a toxic situation. One Ole Miss insider explained it to me this way. The situation with Lane, this is what an insider at Ole Miss, how this person described it to me. If you're married, there's only a few things that you can say to your wife that are so over the line, you can never go back. Meaning you say those things, even if you reconcile, it's never going to be the same. And Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin feel like they're at that point where you just can't go back. He has had the opportunity time and again to affirm his commitment to Ole Miss. He hasn't been willing to do it, which tells you the answer to the test. He is leaving. He wants to leave Ole Miss for greener pastures. But he also wants to coach this team to and through the playoff. He wants to have his cake and eat it too. So this is the biggest challenge for Ole Miss and LSU and Lane Kiffin, this weird love triangle that's going on right now. Because Lane Kiffin is still under contract with Ole Miss. So follow me. Ole Miss, recognizing their coach is likely going to leave. And I believe on Friday, Lane Kiffin will coach the Egg Bowl. Saturday, they'll make an announcement that he's leaving. Short time later, LSU will announce they're hiring Lane Kiffin. And then I believe Lane Kiffin will be in Baton Rouge on Monday. But what complicates that is Ole Miss can't actually hire a coach or offer a coach their job while Lane Kiffin is the coach. This is the complicating factor. And Lane Kiffin, as we've said, doesn't want to leave. Lane Kiffin wants to coach his team through the end of the season. Lane Kiffin, if you had a druthers, would have this go like the NFL. You play out the season, and then when the season's over, then there's an open period where coaches get fired and hired and all that sort of stuff. That's what Lane Kiffin would prefer. He would coach his team throughout this season, whatever it may be. First round, quarterfinals, semis, whatever it may be. And when the season ends, then he would leave. If Lane Kiffin had his preference, that's how it would look. But that's not how it gets to go. Because Ole Miss, as I've told you now for more than 2 weeks here, whether you thought I was giving you an opinion at the time, was not giving you an opinion. And everybody knows it now. There's no way they're letting him coach the team in the playoff if he's leaving. If he's leaving, They're not going to let him recruit for a conference rival who they're going to play every year, by the way, build a roster for that team, be on the sideline for Ole Miss while the whole broadcast is talking about the coach coaching their rival next year. There's no way Ole Miss is going to let that happen. So he wants to coach. They're not going to let him coach in the playoff if he's not staying. But Ole Miss isn't going to fire him. Because if Ole Miss fires Lane Kiffin, they would owe him $36.6 million. That's his buyout. If they fire him, they owe him $36.6 million. And by the way, there's no mitigation. So if you come at me with it, yeah, that's great, but he'll get a new job and it'll offset the buyout. There's no mitigation in Lane Kiffin's contract. So if Ole Miss fires him, they owe him $36 million, which of course they're not going to pay him $36 million. They're not going to fire Lane Kiffin. So what they need is for Lane Kiffin just to leave. They need him to bow out. Well, he doesn't want to do that. He wants to coach his team. So he's not going to willingly leave. He's going to make Ole Miss push him out. Are they going to suspend him? Are they going to demote him? Are they going to reassign him? I don't know. Are they going to put him on leave? I'm not an attorney. I don't know all the specifics of the contract. I don't know what recourse Ole Miss has, but this is the really complicated part, because Ole Miss is not going to let him coach. I fully suspect that they're going to promote Joe Judge to be their interim head coach to coach this team in the playoff when Lane Kiffin leaves. But they don't have a path, seemingly right now, to just force him out. They need him to leave. And he doesn't want to leave, so he's going to make them force him out so they look like they're the bad guy. He wanted to coach his team, and they pushed him out. That's the game that's being played right now. And the other tidbit here is that Ole Miss, according to many people I've spoken with, would have John Summerall of Tulane at the top of their list. But so does Auburn. And Florida is reportedly interested in John Summerall. Remember, a week ago, they had the meeting that was reported by On3 and then debunked by On3. But I think Florida is very much interested in John Summerall. Now, I don't know which of those jobs Summerall would prefer, but he's going to be the apple of a lot of teams' eyes in this cycle. And we mentioned North Texas coach Eric Morris has already taken the Oklahoma State job. So that candidate pool is thinning out. Now, if Ole Miss wants John Summerall, but so does Auburn and Florida, Ole Miss, they need to move. They need to move quickly so that they don't miss out on their top target to a conference rival. And then what are they left with? Like, do they go overpay for Eli Drinkwitz? Now, I mentioned as well just a bit ago that I had a tidbit on Eli Drinkwitz. Well, the tidbit on Eli Drinkwitz is that Missouri, their board, is preparing a contract extension for Drinkwitz. Now, as I understand it, I don't think it's going to be like a significant raise or anything, but it's going to be a commitment to Drinkwitz to keep him in place. Drinkwitz very likely is going to wait to see how this hiring cycle plays out to see if he gets LSU or Florida or a job at Auburn, a job he deems a better job, but he'll have the bird in hand at Missouri to stay if, in fact, he wants to do that and sign his extension at Missouri. So there's a chance, as you look at how all this plays out, that Ole Miss is sitting there waiting on who they want to be their replacement for Kiffin, potentially Summerall. But if Summerall commits to, if another one of these schools holds Summerall's feet to the fire and makes him make a decision, then Ole Miss, while they're waiting out Lane Kiffin, may end up missing their top target. And then who else is left? That's the really challenging thing right now for Ole Miss, if in fact they are replacing Lane Kiffin, as it appears they will be. So the biggest challenge right now is the time frame and how Ole Miss exits or ushers out Lane Kiffin in an agreeable manner. That is going to be fascinating to follow this weekend. Now, we've talked about Florida looking like they've moved on. We've talked about Ole Miss beginning their soft launch of a coaching search to replace Lane Kiffin, although they can't formally do anything right now. So where does that leave LSU? We'll touch on that as we continue and wrap up Locked on LSU, your team every day. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25. And I love the zone deals too. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. So the final piece of this to discuss would be LSU's timeline. So as we've talked about it here, Florida kind of conceding is starting to interview other coaches in earnest. As I mentioned, Eli Drinkwitz, Clark Lee, Brent Key from Georgia Tech, or John Sumrall, or a few of the names that I've heard associated with Florida. Ole Miss has begun its soft launch of a coaching search to replace Lane Kiffin as they assume he's leaving. LSU has been singular this whole time. Now, as I understand it, LSU feels like they do not have a good, solid number 2 option if it falls apart with Lane Kiffin. Remember, 4 years ago, all of the talk was around Lincoln Riley. And when Riley ended up at USC, within 24 hours, LSU had hired Brian Kelly. So they had their 1A, 1B options, however you want to rank them. And they were able to quickly pivot. I believe LSU's number 2 option is Eli Drinkwitz. I do not believe, however, based on all of the reaction from fans, I believe that reaction has been so toxic that it has given the board, this search committee, a lot to think about if that's the path they would want to follow. Plus, Drinkwitz is making $9 million. So do you really want to pay Eli Drinkwitz $10, $11 million a year? That's a hard sell to the LSU fans for a coach that's 1-9 against the top 10 and 6-16 against ranked opponents. So that's a big part of it. The other names I've mentioned to you, John Sumrall, Kenny Dillingham. I think Blake Baker is on that list as well as the safety net. If you end up going far down this road, all the other candidates are gone and you find yourself at lurch, you could promote the very popular assistant that would be an easy sell to LSU fans. And because you can look around college football and go, well, Notre Dame promoted Marcus Freeman. Georgia hired Kirby Smart. Ohio State promoted Ryan Day. Michigan promoted Sharon Moore. Oregon hired Dan Lanning. All of these programs, Oklahoma hired, their last 3, Bob Stoops, Lincoln Riley, Brent Venables, all coordinators. These major programs that have hired assistants to their first head coaching job, there's precedent for it. So I think that would be maybe your last option would be promoting Blake Baker. But LSU has been very clear from the beginning that they are willing to wait for Lane Kiffin, who is their number 1 choice. I want to remind you this. 3 weeks ago, when Verge Osbury was promoted to the full-time athletic director role at LSU, he came on my radio show, and I was asking him a series of questions about criteria for the candidates. Remember this before we knew that they were far down the road with Lane Kiffin. And I asked Verge Osbury about the timing for a potential playoff team. Give a listen.
So in theory, like if there were a coach, again, this is hypothetical, if there were a coach who made the playoffs and was coaching beyond January 1st, that wouldn't necessarily eliminate them from consideration?
No, it would not.
You don't take my word for it. LSU's athletic director there was telling you they would wait into January for the right candidate, which means they would miss the December high school signing period and the early January portal period, waiting on the right coach. For them, they're telling you what's paramount is hiring the right coach. So Ole Miss has been so toxic. Boosters, players, fans. Ole Miss fans have started creating FULK buttons that they're passing out. Like, they are pushing Lane Kiffin away. And LSU is going, we got the contract that you want. We got the NIL that you want. And we're willing to be as patient as you want. As I've heard, LSU has expressed to Lane Kiffin from the beginning of this entire process that they would wait to the end of the college football playoff for him. Take as long as you want. We'll sit here and wait patiently. So LSU is making it a soft landing zone for Kiffin to say yes at his own pace, not pressuring him. Whereas Ole Miss is pushing him away, and Florida is starting to interview other candidates. The writing is on the wall. Lane Kiffin is a heavy favorite to LSU. I'll tell you the caveat I always do. Until the ink is dry on the binding contractual agreement, it's not done. We've seen so many examples of it to the contrary. But as of this very moment, all the evidence suggests Florida is conceding, they're moving on, and Lane Kiffin, barring something dramatically unforeseen, is going to be LSU's next head football coach. As this continues to evolve, we'll follow it right here on Locked on LSU. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And thank you for helping make the Locked on Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Until next time, it's Locked on LSU, your team every day.